Hello dear students, we will be discussing lesson number 12, Basics of Goods and Service Tax. In the previous chapter, we have seen the pre-GST era, various constitutional amendments to bring in GST. In this chapter, we will be learning what exactly GST is, and this is the beginning of learning GST. In this chapter, we will be seeing why GST has been brought about, how GST works, what is supply? What is the concept of supply under GST? The taxable event for GST to be charged is supply. So what is a taxable event? Taxable event is an event where a tax has to be charged. In our previous chapter, we learned how government had to bring in various amendments to the constitution to give concurrent powers to the state and the center. In this chapter, we will have an overview of goods and service tax. We shall learn how GST is levied with the help of various numerical examples and by understanding what is value chain. Article 246A has given the power to levy goods and service tax. There are a few items that do not come under the ambit of GST. The definition of GST says any tax and indirect tax that is levied on all goods and services other than alcoholic liquor for human consumption. That itself makes it clear that alcoholic liquor for human consumption does not come under the ambit of GST. Similarly, electricity is also not covered under GST. We know the point of taxation in GST is supply. So, what is supply? Supply includes sale, transfer, barter, license, lease, rental, disposal. These things are included in supply. There are basically two elements for supply. That is, supply should be for a consideration and supply should be in the course or furtherance of business. As well, supply should be undertaken by a taxable person. So, in our chapter, we will learn what supply means. We will learn what Schedule 1, Schedule 2 and Schedule 3 talk about. Schedule 1 talks about supply made in the course or furtherance of business without consideration. What does that mean? A while ago, we saw that there are two elements to supply. One is that supply should be for a consideration. Second, it should be in the course or furtherance of business. But there are a list of various items that has been given under Schedule 1 that even if there is no consideration, it shall still be considered as a supply. For example, you have your office in Mysore. You are building another office in Bangalore. So for that, you take architectural services from your sister in Australia, who is residing in Australia. The services that you take from your sister is in the course or furtherance of your business. Because she is your sister, you may not pay her anything. But still, such services that you take from her will be taxable event. That is, it will be considered as supply under GST. So, like this, similarly, there are a few other things that come under this list which shall be considered as supply even though there is no consideration. In Schedule 2, we will be talking about the things that are either considered as supply of goods or either considered as supply of services. Sometimes it becomes ambiguous to understand whether it is a good or a service. For example, when you go to a restaurant, what happens? They supply food, also they supply services. So, will you tax it as supply of goods or will you tax it as supply of services? So, under these cases, it has been clearly defined that supply of restaurant services will be considered as a supply of service and not as a supply of goods. So, under Schedule 2, it is given clearly what items are considered as goods and what items are considered as services. For example, if you are transferring any title of goods, suppose I own a car and I sell it to you. So, I am transferring the title of the car to you. It shall be considered as supply of goods. Same way, if I transfer the right to use my car, suppose I am giving my car on hire to you, then it is a supply of service and not a supply of good. So, in this way, we learn what is supply of good and a service in Schedule 2. In Schedule 3, it is called the negative list. That is, these shall neither be considered as a supply of good nor a supply of service. For example, the services that an employee gives to an employer is exempt. That is, it shall not be considered as a supply of good nor a service. This is called negative list, for which GST shall not be charged. There are a list of various items that come under the negative list. The three schedules we learn in section 7 of CGST Act. Further moving on, we will be learning section 8 that talks about composite and mixed supply. This is a very interesting and an easy topic for you. There are specific rates given by the GST Council for certain goods or certain services. Suppose you buy a pen, so it will be taxed at 12%. So that is clearly defined by the GST Council that when you buy that particular good, we are going to tax you at such and such rate. But what happens when you are combining two or more goods or combining goods and a service together? So in such cases, it becomes difficult to determine what is the tax rate. In such cases, the concept of composite and mixed supply comes into play. Composite and mixed supply is two or more taxable goods or services supplied in conjunction with each other in the course or furtherance of business, where you can identify the principal supply in the supply. Quoting a simple example for you to understand, when you buy an ice cream, you get a spoon along with it. So are you going to tax the spoon or are you going to tax the ice cream? You are getting two goods here, right? So in such cases, what happens? Ice cream is the principal component. Because you're buying the ice cream, you're getting the spoon along with it, right? So the principal component is the ice cream. The spoon is the ancillary component. So that will together be a composite supply. So when you're able to identify the principal component correctly, it is a composite supply. Because you're buying the ice cream, you're getting a spoon along free with it. The spoon is not sold separately. But in the case of our tie, belt and watch example, all three are capable of being sold separately. You cannot identify which one is the principal component. All those three things can be important in the supply, right? So this is a very interesting topic and an easy topic for you. Moving forward, we will be talking about forward charge and reverse charge. Forward charge means I am the supplier. Okay, suppose I am the shopkeeper. I am selling some chocolates to you. So what do? In that 100 rupees, 85 rupees is the value of the chocolate. 15 rupees is GST. 100 rupees is the value of the chocolate. I am charging 100 rupees from you, right? So what am I doing? I am actually collecting 85 rupees from me, 15 rupees to the government. So 15 rupees I collect from my customer and remit the same to the government. This is called forward charge, where the supplier of goods or service collects the tax from the customer and then remits to the government. In some cases, what happens? The supplier is not registered under GST or he is not paying taxes under GST. The recipient of service has to bear the entire burden of the tax. This is called reverse charge. Under reverse charge mechanism, we learned that the recipient of service pays tax. How does that work? Now, suppose a director gives some services to a company. Who is the supplier of service here? Director. Who is the recipient of service? The company, right? The director in this case, being the supplier, does not have any liability to pay tax. The company, being the recipient, has to pay tax to the government. So this is one case of forward charge. Similarly, insurance agent gives service to the insurance company. The insurance company has to bear the tax. One more case, if an unregistered person is supplying some goods or service to a registered person, being unregistered, I do not have to pay any tax, right? The registered person in turn has to bear the liability of the tax. So this is reverse charge. Further, we discuss what is composition scheme. GST has various procedural and administration aspects. It is quite complicated for a registered person under GST to undergo such procedural things. He has to file monthly returns, annual returns, or in some cases quarterly returns, undertake GST audit, So there are various things that a registered person has to compulsorily do under GST. For a registered person, it becomes quite tedious and difficult at times to follow all the procedural aspects. To make things simple, to ease such procedural difficulties for small taxpayers, a scheme known as composition scheme has been brought about. So who can opt for composition scheme? Every supplier whose aggregate turnover is less than 1.5 crores can opt for composition scheme. Under special category states, the threshold stands at 75 lakhs. Composition tax is a hassle-free tax mechanism. You do not have to keep filing monthly returns or go through various aspects or various complications that is required under GST. The taxpayer files quarterly returns and tax is paid directly at some percentage on the turnover. That is, for manufacturers it is 1%, for restaurant services it is 5%, for traders it is 1%. So if your turnover is 100 rupees, you pay 1 rupee tax to the government. There is no aspects of input tax credit for composition tax payer. That is, if I am a composition registered person, I cannot avail input tax credit, nor can I collect any tax from my customer. That is, unlike other registered person who collect tax, avail input tax credit and then pay the balance tax to the government, I cannot avail such a thing. I will be paying direct 1% on my turnover. So on every signboard of mine, I have to clearly mention that I am a composition taxable person, not eligible to collect tax. So there are various forms and rules that a composition taxable person has to undertake. We shall be studying all of them in our concept. Moving forward to the last component of the chapter, it is the exemptions under GST. Exemptions are general exemption and exemption by a special order. General is that is applicable to everybody. Suppose for milk, curd, wheat, for such things there is no GST. So it is applicable all over India to every person. But if it is a special exemption, then such an exemption is available full 100% or is available partly to that specific person. So we shall be studying what are the various exemptions and how by notification the government can give various exemptions to the taxpayers. This chapter is very interesting to understand the various basic components of goods and service tax. I request all of you to use different colors of markers and highlighters. Use sticky notes at the top corner of your page, that whenever I am explaining examples or giving explanation to those concepts, you write it down so that it is helpful for you to remember later on and study well for your examinations. Hello everyone, I hope you all are doing good. In this video, let us learn about the basic concepts of GST. First, let us see the meaning of GST. GST is a single unified tax on every value addition right from manufacture to sale or to consumption of goods or service. We know that GST is one tax that has replaced all the indirect taxes in the country today. Only customs law is prevalent other than GST. With the advent of GST, the legacy taxes on manufacture, that is, before the advent of GST, excise duty would be levied on manufacture, central sales tax would be levied on interstate sales, value added tax would be levied on intrastate sales, intrastate is within the state, and service tax would be levied on all the services. All these have been subsumed to form one tax, that is GST. So there has been a paradigm shift. It means there has been a great shift in the way we are levying taxes in our country today. We have moved from source-based taxation to destination-based taxation. Source-based means before, taxes would be levied on the manufacturing point. Now, taxes are levied at the consumption point. GST is also labeled as destination-based or consumption-based tax. GST also does away with the cascading effects of taxation. We shall see the meaning of these terms one by one. First, let us see consumption-based tax. Suppose Karnataka is the manufacturing state. Okay, and the goods are moving from Karnataka to Tamil Nadu. So Tamil Nadu is the consumer state. What happens in GST is all the revenue from GST will move to Tamil Nadu. So Tamil Nadu, being the consumption state or being the consumer state, will receive all the revenue from GST. So that is why it is called as consumption based tax. Destination principle. In the value added chain, consumer is the last point in the chain. So all the tax burden, the final tax burden, will be borne by the consumer. That is why it is called as the destination principle. GST is levied on all goods and services. Goods are those that have movable property, and services are those which are not goods. So that is what the definition says. Value added tax means GST is levied on every value addition. We shall understand this value addition further in the video. Seamless credit. Whenever a person in the value chain purchases something and he pays tax on the purchase, that is tax on the inputs, he is eligible to get a credit of the tax that he has paid on such purchases. So that is known as input tax credit. GST is levied on all states, that is including Jammu and Kashmir. Let us understand GST better by understanding what is meant by value added chain. First, for example, wholesaler is the first point. For example, wholesaler is the first point, then the goods move towards the retailer, and then the goods move towards the consumer. First, if the wholesaler has purchased from the manufacturer, okay, goods worth rupees 100, and he does a value addition of rupees 30, right? So to make profits, and he'll add all his costs. Value addition would be his cost and his profit percentage. So the value of the goods for which he sells to the retailer will be rupees 130. Okay. First, suppose this wholesaler has paid tax at 10%. First, he pays tax to the manufacturer at 10%. That is, here he has paid rupees 10. Okay. So on input he has paid rupees 10. On output, when he is selling to the retailer, he will collect rupees 13 from the retailer. So he will collect from the retailer rupees 13. He has paid rupees 10. So what is the difference amount? 3 rupees. Okay. So the ultimate tax that he will be paying to the government is 3 rupees. This is the credit that he is going to get for the purchases, for the tax that he has paid on the purchases. Okay. How is this a value added tax? Now, what is the actual value added that the consumer has done? Rupees 30, right? So here we have taken that the GST percentage is 10%. This is, we are assuming it as 10%. So 10% of 30 is rupees 3. So what is the actual tax that he has paid? Rupees 3. Okay. So GST is a value added tax because tax is levied on every value addition made by the supplier. Next, in the value chain, the goods move towards the retailer now. Okay. The retailer has purchased the goods from the wholesaler for rupees 130, right? 100 plus 30, 130. This is his cost price now. 130 becomes the cost price. Now he will make an addition, that is a value addition of rupees 20. And so his goods are worth rupees 150 now. 150, this he will sell it to the consumer. This will become the purchase price for the consumer. Now, he has paid 10%, that is, he has paid rupees 13 on the input. Now he is collecting rupees 15 on the output. So on the output rupees 15, on the input he has paid rupees 13 tax. What is the difference that he is going to pay to the government? 15 minus 13 is rupees 2. Okay, so this is the tax that he is going to pay to the government. So again here, what is the value addition done? Rupees 20. Rupees 20 is the value addition done by the retailer at 10% is rupees 2. So what is the actual tax he is depositing to the government? Rupees 2. So that is why it is a value added tax. Now ultimately, why did we say that the whole burden of GST will be borne by the consumer? Let us see now. GST is called as the destination based taxation, right? We just saw in the previous slide. Consumer is the last point in the value added chain. Consumer is not going to sell this goods to somebody else. He is going to use it. He is going to consume the good. Now this consumer purchased the goods for rupees 150. So this is his purchase price. How much tax did he pay at 10%? Rupees 15. Correct. So rupees 15, he is not going to get any credit. He is not selling this to any other party. Correct. This is the last point of consumption. 15 rupees he will pay to the government. The consumer will not get any credit and 15 will be paid to the government. So that is why it is called as consumption based taxation or destination based tax. Okay. Next, let us take another numerical example. First, wholesaler is party A. Okay. Then wholesaler sells to retailer, party B. Retailer sells to consumer, party C. Now, we are talking on the part of the retailer now. Imagine you are a retailer now. Okay. Retailer is the shopkeeper. First, he purchases goods from the wholesaler. Purchase, right? Purchase goods from the wholesaler for rupees 1 lakh. 1 lakh is the value of supply. Pays a GST of 18%. That is 18,000 on 1 lakh. So the invoice value, total value that he is paying to the wholesaler is 1,18,000. Correct? Now, what happens? Value of supply is 1 lakh. He makes a value addition of 20%. That is 1,20,000. Now, he is collecting a tax of GST at 18%. 18% of 1,20,000 is 21,600. So the invoice value to the consumer is 1,41,600. This is the price that the consumer will pay. I hope I am clear. The retailer purchased for 1 lakh. This is without GST. The wholesaler added a GST, collected GST of 18,000. So he pays 1,18,000 to the wholesaler. Now the retailer will make a value addition on this. That is plus 20%. So the value of supply will become 1,20,000. And he charges GST at 18%. That is 21,600. That is he collects from the consumer. This he paid. Now the invoice value to the consumer became 1,41,600. Now let us see how the credit mechanism works. On the part of the wholesaler, what happens? B is the retailer, okay? B is the retailer. Wholesaler is A. Customer or consumer is C. Right? So tax collected from B is 18,000. We saw in the previous slide. The wholesaler collected 18,000. Now, the wholesaler collected 18,000 and he remitted the same to the government. So his final tax incidence is nil. He collected 18,000. He paid 18,000 to the government. Now, retailer. C is the customer. We saw in the previous slide. Here he collected 21,600 from the customer. C is the customer collected. How much did he pay to the wholesaler? A is the wholesaler, right? wholesaler. He paid 18,000. Now he collected 21,600, paid 18,000. That is, this is input tax. How much did he pay to the government? 21,600 minus 18,000 is 3,600. Now, coming on part of the customer, B is the retailer, right? B is the retailer. The consumer paid 21,600. Here we see, right? In total, he paid 1,41,600, where the actual value of the supply was 1,20,000. GST part is 21,600. So the consumer pays 21,600 to the government. So the final tax incidence is borne by the consumer. So along with these numerical examples, we have learned what is consumption based taxation, what is destination based taxation, and how the consumer is the last point or the last point in the value chain, and who bears the final tax incidence. Now let us see what is dual GST model. India has adopted a dual GST model where the central government and the state together levy the tax. Suppose on every supply, what happens if it is an intra-state supply? If it is an intra-state, suppose within Karnataka and within Karnataka, okay? What happens? CGST and SGST are levied together. Suppose this is Mysore and some goods are moving to Bangalore, and the goods are worth rupees 100, okay, and GST at 18%. 18 rupees, total would be 118. Here in this 18% component, 9% is CGST, another 9% is SGST. So rupees 9 goes to the central government, rupees 9 goes to the state government. Same case, if goods are moving within a union territory, okay, instead of SGST, UTGST, that is Union Territory GST, will be levied. Now we spoke about intrastate, that is within the state or within the Union Territory. Now talking of interstate, suppose if goods move from Punjab to Andhra Pradesh, okay. Now with the same example, rupees 100, goods are worth 100, 18 rupees integrated GST will be charged, okay. So this is the mechanism of dual GST model that has been adopted by our government. Now let us see what are the items that are presently not taxable under GST. First, these items do not come under the purview of GST, but by a notification, the government can at any time include these goods under GST. First, petroleum, crude and petrol. GST is not levied, but central excise duty is levied, okay. Then high speed diesel, central excise duty is levied. Natural gas, central excise duty. Electricity, state government, state excise duty is levied. Alcohol for human consumption, state excise duty. Aviation turbine fuel, central excise duty. Another interesting part is tobacco. On tobacco, both excise duty and GST are levied, okay. I hope you've understood the contents in this video. Thank you.